It can be incredibly difficult sharing what I try to share online, and I understand that, which is why I don't often complain about it, but it is something that might want to complain about, which is why a lot of people in this community do complain about it. I tend to look more on the optimistic side of things, looking at the solutions and let's say, let's be the change, let's show by example for that reason. And then when I usually talk to people in person, I like to stick by questions. But once in a while, I will make an online appearance. And these are the moments where I tend to get a little bit more confused because I'm not naturally interacting. There usually is an audience or there's a group of people, and they all can be totally new to what I have to say. So all it takes is one person to be triggered enough to ask some questions that are typical of the mindset that does not study or is willing to look into the ideas that we talk about. And those ideas that I talk about are statism and voluntarism. These two ideas that, again, I find very important for the evolution of humanity. I say this often on my channel. And the last thing I want to do is say that I'm right or that my ideas should be imposed on others. But in fact, that's the very idea of what statism and voluntarism entails when you understand it, is realizing no one person gets to decide how everybody else's life works. There is no master plan for society. Every time government rises, it falls. Due to democide, it creates the number one cause of unnatural death. The Stanley Milgram experiment, the Stanford prison experiment, Carl Jung, and many others that I've talked about throughout my videos. They all detail this belief system, how dangerous it is that the order follower suppresses their conscience and just does what they're told. And you just see examples and examples of it in history, yet time and time again, people will, under pressure, do what they're told because they believe in an authority figure. And that idea of authority is not understood by many people, because that primarily is the thing we're trained into. I'm not saying there isn't supposed to be leaders. I'm not saying there isn't supposed to be voluntary hierarchies. There always will be. And in fact, that's what we need to get out of this scenario of authority. Authoritarianism, you can kind of equate them together. And maybe there is some word games because some people might want to use the word government in a positive way if it's voluntary. All I'm saying is do no violence to peaceful people. Leave people alone. Live and let live. The golden rule. Right? And yet these are moral rules, but yet the first reaction often to talking about anarchism or voluntarism, one and the same, by the way, is there will be chaos. When the word anarchon means no rulers, they imply no rules. They imply no morality. When in fact, I just said that morality is what allows us to live without rulers, without government authority. Now you can just see me explaining all this, how difficult it can be. Because I think, although I described it somewhat well here, and many people who understand this will say, yeah, you speak it really well, because they understand it. Many people who don't understand it are going to say, man, you really explained that badly. So this is what I deal with. You're dealing with a world that is totally not in sync with the ideas until they are. And this goes for pretty much anything in life, right? But see, there are some things so fundamental to people's belief systems that it's really difficult to grasp. And, Taoism, I think, hits it really well on that because you're looking at literally everything in your life and putting it on its head and putting it at question. But in this scenario, we're saying, hey, this government that you're under, this idea of America, this flag, this country, it's just all made up. This is just mythology. This is just a superstition that was passed day in and day out for many thousands of years. There's been many governments before this, but you were trained into thinking your government's the best, or that this one is the one that is better formed. And we need to have new politicians and new laws to change things, make things happen and work. And if we study philosophy and all these people who did believe in authority, we can make it work having authority and never question the underlying authority. And what I'm doing, and what Larkin Rose, Mark Passio, Derek Bros, and many others are doing, is looking at the foundations to all of it, which is that belief in authority, which is why statism is essentially all the other isms together. That is, all the isms that comprise of involuntary hierarchies, that be governments. Okay? Involuntary, meaning it's against your free will choice. You don't get to live your life as you please. And so then people will say, well, if you have a voluntary free world, if you have anarchy, people are going to go around killing each other. That already breaks voluntarism. That already breaks the idea of having or basically upholding voluntary interaction. Instead, what they want is to have a system imposed on everybody with a certain select rules and certain people in certain positions, and it's all arbitrary. And yes, before my idea too is people arbitrarily interacting. The difference is there's the possibility of crime and then there's the guarantee of crime. Okay? There's voluntary hierarchies with some involuntary actions within, and then you have an involuntary hierarchy with also involuntary actions within. And that's what we have right now. We have an involuntary hierarchy with involuntary actions within. And see, when I explain it like this, it sounds, I feel like complicated. To me, it's complicated, right? Now, I don't know. It's just because you have to learn the language. What's a hierarchy? What's involuntary? When it's as simple, reducing it down to involuntary means it's violence. Violence means it's wrong. It's you're harming somebody. You're committing a crime, right? And most people know what a crime is. Most people know what harm is, what wrongdoing is. So it's not like I have to really define that. It's when we start turning them to these other words and then challenging an individual's own belief system that they start to get triggered and they say, oh, shoot, I can't look at it. And so be able to build up your concepts, be able to learn from these concepts, and you will see that I do have a point. I am not advocating chaos. I am not advocating a world without leaders and people who take positions of leadership. But I'm not saying, and you may even say they have authority in something, but they don't have inherent authority by putting on a crown or a uniform and putting something on a charter. That is not what gives them the authority. We give them the authority, our belief systems, our mind. And we believe that they have more rights than everybody else. And therefore, what that means is they are exempt from morality. So they can commit an immoral action when everybody else doesn't have the right to do that. Do you follow me? Because, again, I don't think many people can make it past a certain sentence. There's a certain point in time where you watch a video like this and you turn off the video because you don't understand what is being said, or you have an instant reaction to think that it's wrong. Or you have a favorite book or a favorite philosophy that tells you it's wrong. And I talked about Taoism, but I don't need to use that philosophy. I don't need to use any philosophy to understand, okay, you know what's right, what's wrong, that there is no philosophy that really determines that. You know you own yourself. Is there a philosophy that determines that? There's words like akia gnosis or something like that in Stoicism that means self-ownership. But no one uses that term and goes around saying, oh, I have akia gnosis, maybe if you're Greek or something. But basically, self-ownership and morality, these are concepts that you don't necessarily need religion or philosophy for. Now, they can help you. They can help refine it, get really clear on it. But because of the religions and the philosophies being so tied to the governments of the world for so long, people then assume, carry the baby with the basket water, they assume governments are just as natural as these philosophies. And then they go to their sports coach and they go to school and there's a teacher and they see these different positions of leadership. They see their mother-like figure, feminine, and they see their masculine figure in their life. And maybe if they have a lack of one or the other, that's what they seek politically, perhaps. Carl Jung talks about that. I did a video on that. But you see that it reinforces that idea that, well, perhaps government too is just part of that relationship. It's just another one of those relationships, just on a different scale. And that is simply not the case. Because if, say, one of your parents were to violently coerce you, and then others, because they claim to have an authority over your life, you don't have self-ownership anymore. But a parent instead that guides you and supports you, okay, and, voluntarily helps you, that is a supportive parent. So if you do want to reflect it to the family unit, you can. But then you have to deduce it down to voluntary versus involuntary interaction. Because that's what deduces the difference between authority and everyday people. There is no such thing as authority. It's just like saying there's no right to do wrong. There's no scenario in which violence can become right. There's no scenario in which self ownership no longer is existent. You always have self ownership. You always have the right to never do a wrong. You always are able to interact with others voluntarily, but you do not have the right to do wrong to them. And many people argue, well, because I can do it, that means that it's right. No. Just because you think you can do it does not mean it's right. This is moral relativism, which is why C.S. Lewis said it would lead to the abolition of man. This is moral relativism, which is why Mark Passio says that's the most dangerous thing in this world is moral relativism, and why he considers the solution to be learning what morality is. It not, he talks about the problem with authority, and he recognizes that is the problem, but really, what he's saying is the solution is just learning morality. So how could this be interlinked? You say you want chaos, but you also want to teach morality? What's going on here? See, there is an evolution to take place, and in order to be free, the slave must know that they are a slave. They must be empowered and understand their self-ownership, take charge of their self-ownership, otherwise they will just be turned into a slave again. And that's exactly what the abolitionists did. They armed the slaves, gave them ammunition, and they taught them how to read or write. They gave them books, they taught them how to read English, per se, in America. And those same abolitionists understood everything I just said too. William Lloyd Garrison, Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Josiah Warren, Jeremiah Hacker, right? Many of the transcendentalists, many people in the spiritualist community. There were a lot of vegetarians as well, octagon house lovers. I mean, there were several movements going on. Free love movement, free land, women's rights. It was all around the same age. Same thing with the temperance movement. Not prohibition, but temperance, encouraging people to not drink alcohol. But see, those people who said, don't drink alcohol, they weren't saying that we had to use the state to make it sure that it's illegal to have alcohol. They just said it is not right to drink alcohol, so let's teach everybody why it's important not to drink alcohol. Now, which one is more important, education or imposing your will on everybody else using violence or law? People make the justification and say, well, you can't educate people and therefore you must use the law. Look how it turns out. But not only just look at how it turns out, because I know that's more of an abstraction, you can't really tell, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? If you're telling people what to do with their own life, you're already violating their self-ownership. If you believe in self-ownership, which you can say is a belief, when really it's like you know yourself, don't you? Like you have your own body, you breathe for yourself. Like your heart, like you literally only can move for yourself. You can only think for yourself. You can try to give it away to others. You can try to give it, but you can't. It's just an illusion. So everything we're trying to do that is wrong, in a sense, is an illusion. Like everything we try to project and we create these authorities that aren't present naturally in human beings, that is an illusion. Because naturally you own yourself. You are an authority over yourself. The justification is saying, well, some people need it, and, that's collectivism. It's for the common good. It's for the greater good. That's collectivism. What does that mean? The individual is violated. That means the individual is not respected. And that means violence is done against peaceful people. Okay? G. Edward Griffin talked about this in the 60s and the 70s. This is not a hard concept to understand. If you understand individuality versus collectivism, you understand this in a nutshell. But understanding individuality really comes down to understanding the concept of authority, because that's when you give it away. Okay? Even if you put someone in office who says, okay, they're going to respect my individual. Why are you dependent on someone else to respect your own self-ownership? Self-ownership means you don't need someone else to tell you that you own yourself. You don't need someone to tell you that you're free and therefore you're free. It's not the piece of paper or the law or some whim of some person that makes you free. You are free. So again, that's an illusion. The belief and idea that that is what is required for you to be free. Often when I get into these conversations, people like to change the conversation, right? Larkin Rose in his Candles in the Dark seminar has a graph for this, and there's several tunnels, ways people can get distracted. And it's true, people do get distracted. It's because it's very easy to, again, jump to the philosophies, jump to different things, but not at any moment address psychology and address what you yourself believes and knows deep down inside, very basic and very fundamental, because that's what it is. And some people will even say, Corey, this is too simplistic, what you're talking about. So that's another complaint I get. It's too simplistic. I mean, I have videos on each complaint, and then I have videos going over, like, how many videos do I need to make? At a certain point, when is enough, right? And that's why, again, showing by examples is important, and especially since you can't convince some people, because they're not going to even look into it to begin with. So how do you expect them to understand it? So, like, I think that's insane, right? It's like willing ignorance to somebody saying, hey, this could be the root cause problem to everything. I rarely come across people who say, hey, this is the root cause problem to everything. But when they do, I really sit down and evaluate it. Because what if they're right? But oftentimes, no, we're not talking about the root cause. We're talking about the symptoms. And that's what we're doing so often, but we don't see it. And so that's why I invite practitioners. I invite people who are gardening, who are connecting with the earth. I invite people who are liberals, they care about freedom, because that's what liberal means, who are conservatives, who care about family values and the traditions. Well, I agree with all of you. It's just about applying our principles and what we know to everything in our life, with no exception, no contradiction. Because I guarantee you, in all of those groups, there's that contradiction if you believe in authority, if you have a statist mentality. And it sounds condescending, too, to perhaps say, you are a statist, and you must think this, or you don't know this. And it can be hard not to sound condescending if you really know that people in themselves and they don't want to embrace that fact. Or they're latching onto their ideology just so they don't have to look at that fact, when it's so evident and so freeing to understand that fact. And those who understand it will understand the pain and the suffering that I have to talk about this, and the difficulty of how to talk about this. But yet we see it's there. And that's the key. Don't think it would be easy for a slave to get off the plantation and say, I'm free, and I can convince the other slaves that they are free. Oof. Read Frederick Douglass in his journal, and you will find out he has the exact same struggles as what I'm talking about. But that's a comparison I can't make, is it? Is it so? You're looking at an authority figure, the slave master. Is it an authority or is it a leader? Are they voluntarily following that authority, or is it involuntary, and if they disobey, they're going to be thrown back on that plantation? They're going to be beaten up. They're going to have some slave patrol police go after them. You don't think there's any correlation whatsoever? Well, if you don't, I encourage you read my book, Slavery Gone for Good. If you come from a more spiritual background, you want this more through a philosophical background, and you're curious about the Chinese and how they understood this thousands of years ago, you can get my book, Tao, The Full Return to Nature. If you're curious all the mechanisms by which government replaces the role of nature and its authority naturally, as is your authority over yourself, then my book, Government is Unnatural, Anarchy is Natural, is for you. And then if you feel like, well, this all comes down to honesty and being able to embrace what we know deep down inside and trying to find the truth to our actual living condition, as did the abolitionists when they said after thousands of years, slavery is wrong. They're trying to be honest, and they're trying to find the honest reality. It doesn't matter how long it existed. It doesn't matter how many people believed in it. Then my book, Nature's Radical Honesty, might answer that. I have different books and different projects. Sometimes I look back on my channel, and I see I have over 1,000 videos. And I don't let it bother me, but the amount of work that I put into some videos makes me not want to put in work to certain videos, because I put so much work into it and I did not really get a lot out of it. But that's just looking at numbers. And we get in our own way. And I'm still prone to illusions, just as that. I'm still prone to pushing my opinion where I probably shouldn't. And that is again addressing our shadows, which is why I often talk about that on my channel, especially recently with psychology. But see, if you are into truth seeking, psychology, and learning about this universe, then this channel is for you. And that's why you're watching this. And if you've made it 20 minutes, that's definitely why you're watching this. So I don't think I'm alone when I say these struggles, which I am open with. And I have no problem saying it. There's people who make videos like, I'm struggled, I was gay and nobody accepted me. It's like, I'm an anarchist and nobody accepts me. Like, hello? That's like every anarchist that understands these views. But not really. Again, you don't want to cast that onto yourself and dwell with that. Not really. You can find people who are like-minded. That's why I tend to be more positive. That's why I tend to be more uplifting. But once in a while, you're going to have those moments, especially as a content creator like me, where you put in loads of work and you don't really get much out of it, as much as you'd like, because you want the world to understand things. And, I have moments where it's like, it's okay. I don't want to be famous, because I don't want to be famous. Like, it's not, I want the ideas to get big. So it's like, I have this confliction. It's like, well, I need to also have more of a presence in order to get the message out. See, it's like, that's why I'm willing to put out an unprofessional video like this. It makes me not want to put out a professional video when I see like my really hardworking videos don't do well. And that's not a good thing, right? Because I want to produce videos out of my heart, out of my passion. So that's it. That's all I have to really say. I mean, it's not really a struggle. I mean, if you ask me, it's like, come on, it's not a struggle, right? But nonetheless, it is. Okay, it is worth saying people struggle with talking about these ideas and sharing them with others. And someone may use that as a defense to say, well, that's why we shouldn't be talking about it. But that goes for any ideology and things that people are just not used to. So that's not a good argument. But needless to say, whether it's a good argument or not, I mean, again, I just want people to think for themselves, live their own lives. Very simple intentions. I was raised in a very traditional family. I had no real bad problems, but yet people might assume that it's me who is projecting, who is lacking something in life. I don't think so. I've evaluated myself. I've done the shadow work. I don't think so. And that's good. The fact that there's people like me who say the same thing. But then there's also people who have had a lot of bad experiences. Does that really make them any worse in their knowledge and their understanding? If anything, I would say that gives them great credit. They have experience. So people jump to presumptions. They jump to what's comfortable, and they jump to different things because they don't want to look into it. That's it. Like, even if it's not an insecurity, it's like, I just don't want to look at it. I'm pretty set on what I know. But you are set on what you know. It's like, just so they can not look into it for themselves. Projection happens in many different ways. And so I want to be more conscious. And if you see I do something wrong, if you see I'm not addressing something that needs to be addressed, you must tell me. Okay? I think that's the beauty of the internet, of different people, outsiders. And you're going to see solutions that I don't see. You're going to see knowledge that I don't study. That's great. Bring it to me. I'm open. I'm willing to learn. There were people who shared blueprints with me about their movement and what they're trying to do. And I was honest with them. I said, hey, I got my own movement. I don't really know if I really vibe with what you're talking about, but I want to share it, and that's why I have the Liberator too. And that's why I have the showcase and the news. And trust me, I will learn, especially as I apply it in like as an article. And as people like say, hey, this is something that's really important. Absolutely. Like, I take people's word. If they say something's important or if they've worked really hard on something, like, my goodness, I give them applaud. So please share with me anything. So one more thing, I was thinking I might as well provide an example of a scenario that you might run into yourself. Since I've had many of these occurrences, and like I said, they're all mainly online in front of audiences, or even, let's say, they were also in front of audiences in person. It's always when people are like together. It's like this weird dynamic happens. But when I talk to someone individually, it doesn't seem to go that way. But anyways, these are just observations. I felt like this is an example. Okay, this is with Old World Florida. It's a really good channel. I like his content. Genuinely love the fact that there's a Florida channel that is talking about a lot of things that you guys might be interested in. But and I like his documentaries. I love a lot of his work. Problem is, I felt like I was quite literally treated like trash. People also make fun of me. I think that's a sign of intelligence when they're like mimicking my voice and all that stuff. I mean, I just think that's silly. And for a doctor to do that, I think that's just unprofessional, not so supportive. I interrupt like here and there, but I realized after reviewing it how badly they kind of treated me, like just interrupting me. I was like pretty surprised. Now you can make up your own mind on it. I was just like, what the heck, man? And there's people with communities like that all the time. So I hope that if I ever do a live stream like that, I ever bring in guests, I don't want to do that to anybody. So I mean, I feel bad. I don't want to be that person because I've been shut out so many times and attacked by different content creators that I don't want to be that person myself. One last thing, every time I do an appearance somewhere and then I check afterwards, there is people in the audience who do see past it and they're like, well, why did you give that person a hard time? Like, why were you bullying him? Like, why were you doing that? And oh, maybe he's got a point. Maybe he's on to something. You know, there's some people who are willing to entertain the thought. Now, by the way, another thing is I like to have fun. And oftentimes when I do some of these engagements, they even admit, they say, I want to cause confrontations. Like this example I'm going to show you. I want to get into a debate. Oh, it's too bad you didn't want to fight me. It's like these are the type of things I hear. I think it's crazy, right? It's like they're literally admitting they're not there to have an intelligent conversation. They're there just to create content and use me for content. And it's like, well, I'm the person with ego. What's going on here, right? But see, this can just be a continual drama loop, which is why I just leave. I don't care. To me, I'm a stronger willed person to just leave a scenario in which it's a relationship that's just not caring. Like they just don't care, right? Like, oh, it's my show. I'm going to do what I want. It's like, come on. I don't want to be that person. Okay. And I like to have fun. Like, unfortunately, I talk about a lot of serious topics on my channel, but I have a lot of fun outside of the work I do because the work I do is focused on very serious material. Most of the internet is just having fun and doing silly stuff. That's the internet, and I don't mind that. But there is serious stuff to be addressed, and I'm not going to equivocate, as William Lloyd Garrison said. I will be heard, and the truth is very harsh, and I will get justice be done. Justice is not necessarily a super soft, loving thing. Although I come with love and I want to show by example, there is that mode of operation in which we say, hey, all on fire is the name of the book that is based on William Lloyd Garrison's work from the 1800s, because he really put everything on fire, the whole world on fire, yet his message was love. Isn't that interesting? Burning passion. That's what I have. Yo, do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How's it
What's
going?
up, Corey? How's it going?
Yeah, so first of all, amazing conversation. I love everything that I've been hearing. And I think I messaged you a few times, perhaps on Instagram. I'm not sure. Maybe if you saw some of my messages and you know who I am a little bit. But my goodness, everything you guys are talking about is just incredible. So I'll just jump right to the questions, I guess. Although there's so much I can say. Um, do you know, because I'm sure you've done a lot of research through all this ancient mythology, all this like ancient knowledge type of stuff. I'm sure that you probably know of Mark Passio or Eric DeBay. Um, I'm just curious because you actually sound a lot like them in many ways when I listen to your work. And I've watched documentaries. I haven't watched many live streams, but I always pop in. But I always watch a lot of your documentaries because I really like the way they're laid out and everything. But are
Longo is
you
a guy
aware?
you would run into at a Buddhist temple in Thailand for
Me?
sure.
Because of
No,
the
Dr.
figure?
Longo. No,
Oh, okay.
not you.
Okay, I was going to say.
Just like Eric Dubé. They are similar in many ways for sure. Wise beyond their years.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, if you know who they are, and then this my second part of that question would be because they address something that I find to be particularly not addressed, and it has to do with mass psychosis and mass hysteria, which you mentioned, Ben. And I was surprised because I have a big medical project I'm working on with several whistleblowers, one of which is an ex-Scientologist who left Scientology at a high level. He can't come down to Clearwater. I could talk about that too, but I was just curious. have you ever heard of statism or voluntarism, these ideas? I mean, you guys also, what I see is beautiful is you're very holistic minded, and seeing the masculine and the feminine, principle of mentalism, the hermetic principle, like the all is mind. You guys have been saying this stuff. So I'm just curious, if you understand that mentality as it has been deemed, in recent
Like
times.
egregores type of thing, thought forms. Is that what you mean by statism?
Statism is particularly like the belief in authority. So if you look up,
But but under what, like, under what terms? Statism. I get your mentioning of
yeah.
authority, but when you're talking about groupthink, what do you mean by that?
So, well, yeah, actually, Carl Jung calls it groupthink and several other things. I did a series on that. What do you mean? Like, so, like, there's a conformity, but it's not just conformity, right? There's a lot
Are
more
you
going
familiar with
on.
egregores and thought forms?
Are you talking about agorism?
No.
Because that's another philosophy.
Egregores. Statism can be defined, and since you're mentioning mass psychosis, you should
Hmm.
look into egregores. Mark
Yeah.
Stavish wrote a fabulous book on it.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Is that how you spell it?
the
Okay. I was curious how
Leviathan.
you
Have you
spelled it
read
because I was
Hobbes?
hearing agorism. I don't know if you've ever heard of that term. It sounded very similar, and it's spelled totally different, but it sounded similar. um, But what's interesting is, you know, I love Florida, by the way. I'm new to Florida. I'm near Tarpon, and I'm holding events every month, and I'm meeting people like you guys, and it's just amazing. Um, so the fact that you have a Florida channel talking about this stuff is just it blows my mind right away. Because I was in communities up in Pennsylvania where they talked about this. And by the way, I know you looked up statism, although you probably shouldn't look it up on Google. You're not going to get the actual use of the definition that everybody who uses the term actually uses it for. So that definition is totally
Longo.
wrong.
Longo, will you put up Leviathan by
Leviathan is,
Hobbes, the
yeah,
book?
that's a very like common philosophy book. But and I actually list that and the
Would you
Tytler
not?
cycle.
Okay, is that's not? So I'm misunderstanding you then when you're talking
No,
about mass psychosis and statism. You're not connecting those two
no.
under the kind of umbrella that I am. Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying that basically our belief in government or human authority vested in man is unnatural and immoral.
Okay.
And it's a claim to say, but I was just curious if you've been aware of it. I know I'm introducing maybe something a little bit more out there, but for ancient times, I would say Taoism, which, I have a yin yang in the back, where it was one of the first philosophies to really acknowledge this concept of letting life be and spontaneity sort of being the natural government of the world in their view, in a sense.
We get it, bro. You
Yeah.
bang chicks. The
But
Tao.
I don't know if you've ever heard
The,
of some of these things I'm just mentioning, but
Well,
whenever anyone
certainly.
says whenever anyone says they're a Taoist, you can just like
I don't know why you say that. I haven't met anybody who thinks like that. It's more so like
I'm just teasing you. Montauk Chia, like
it's more
Montauk Chia, and
for a second.
well,
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
so what's up, Corey?
I
What's
was just curious if you've heard of those concepts. That's all.
so
I
I've
have
never.
absolutely, but not under the not because you started your conversation with the group thought and mass
Mhm.
hysteria. So I was thinking it from the concept of statism and how that affects human thought and collective mind, hive mind ideas.
Sure.
And this book that he brought up uh, is one of my favorites in that defining people collectively under states and titles and flags and all of these different things have their own form of consciousness
Yes.
that's aided and grown and fed by the subjects below them. So that's where I was coming from. So apparently, by your reaction, I was a bit off. So I have to say, I'm not quite sure. I do know the terms, but your perspective perhaps is where I'm
Yeah.
short.
I was just
So
curious because, Mark Passer, like I would consider you guys kind of in the same field of research. You guys talk about a lot of similar things, like with the ancient
who's
knowledge. And the only
who's
thing that
Mark?
really sets you guys different, you're all vegans. I'm not vegan personally. I mean, I talk
Who's
a lot
Mark
about like raw milk
Passio?
and raw eggs and stuff like that. That's where I come from. And it's unfortunate that in Florida it's illegal. I used to have a milkman back in Pennsylvania still to this day delivering glass jars. It's pretty crazy. Um,
You can
But
get it. You can get raw milk here.
in Florida, like shipped to
Oh
your
yeah.
house?
Well, no, you can
Yeah,
pick it up
because I
somewhere.
still get it, but it's not shipped to my house.
Right.
That'd
That's
be sick
very
though.
convenient.
That was because we had Amish up north, right?
Yeah.
And if I lived near the Amish, I probably would have stayed in Pennsylvania, but it's not the case. But everybody's coming down to Florida, and if you go to some of these local farmers markets, they're buying out the raw milk. People are like,
So
"Wow, it's healing
It's the
people."
best.
so here, I've never heard of Mark Passio.
Sure. Okay.
I love Eric Dubay.
Really?
Love him. So any comparisons to Eric Dubay, that's high praise. I love
Okay.
Eric Dubay. He woke me up to geocentrism and a lot of things, but geocentrism mainly, flat earth, whatever you want to call it, flat like Florida. I love Eric Dubay. Can't sing his praises enough. He's very brave. He talks about things that I'm not willing to talk about yet, on YouTube, but
Sure.
we get to tiptoe around the best we can.
Yeah.
I do think that he is like very, like you're saying, he defaults to like anti-authority. Anything anyone's telling me is wrong, and that's okay. I'm down with that.
Hmm.
At the same time, not to like say I'm more evolved or like I am doing it the right way. I'm not saying that at all. My instinct, like my intuition, I tend to be like nationalist. My country is the fucking best. If I didn't think so, I wouldn't be here. Plain as day. We're the best. If your family's not worth living in, you should run away. So make sure your family's the best and greatest on earth, or else it's not a family and you shouldn't belong there. Okay? So I think that by default, where you live you have to love it enough to defend it, right? And I don't. At the end of the day, like authority is inherent. I disagree. I think there is a pyramid structure to authority. You can walk 10 people are in a room, there's a leader and there's a runt. There's
Is it
no ways about
voluntary?
it. It's pheromonal. It's pheromonal.
I
We
think I agree. It's
us
pheromonal and genetic, but it can be altered as you sharpen your blade, so to say, and that anything is possible. Your positions can change, but it takes that kind of mental prowess to elevate whatever your position. That's the beauty of it, right? And like Longo talking about with America, coming from an immigrant family and several men that fled world wars, you weren't allowed to talk badly about America.
You don't
And
think we can evolve past these systems that we have built?
borders,
no,
not in our
listen.
lifetime.
This is let's just do this leftist, and I'm not saying it's leftist, but let's just go down this utopian like fantasy where like the communism. What more attractive of an idea is there? How much more like loving and embracing of a
Collectivism.
exactly, like it's everyone wants a commune. Like, hey, Jimmy, what are our goals in life? Like to have our
Commune.
best friends living close to us nearby on a
Yeah.
piece of land that we've carved out for our own tribe. That's not polluted by outside ideas. Well,
Mhm.
guess what? That almost sounds like Stalin. That almost sounds like how big is your commune going to be? If we're talking about a farm, that's different
But is it
than
voluntary?
well, you can't legislate it. That's what I'm saying. I can tell my family what to do. And like Ben Shapiro always says, the family is the highest, largest capacity of a communist, government is the family. Because anything beyond your government, you cannot legislate compassion. You cannot say, hey, pick up the slack for that guy. And okay, well, let's just go back to authority, right? Because now we're getting towards like welfare, statism and authority. I'm a believer in authority. I'm a believer in the king. I don't care what Mark Passio or Eric Dubay said. I care what Plato says. There's 4 types of government, okay? There's tyranny, oligarchy, monopoly, or monarchy, tyranny, oligarchy, and descended like monarchy, right? No, sorry, I'm wrong. That's the last one. I'll get to that. Oligarchy, tyranny, democracy, and then a kingship. A kingship. So the kingship does not have to be a monarchy. Monarchy implies descended and inherited and entitlement. We're not talking about that. A true king. Remember, we're talking about the Hollywood always wants you to think society's this close from collapsing. This close from collapsing. One bad day at the stock market and you're toast. You're going to be massacred. You know what I mean? The same way they tell you every king there's ever been has been corrupted. Every king there's ever been has been evil. Every king there's ever been has been greedy. Every king there's ever been has taken it by force or has it taken from them by force. No human can withstand that responsibility. No human can withstand that accountability. The story of a king, we're told, or we're shown, is the ultimate display of human inadequacy. Because the king has everything he could ever need, but still they always show us horror story, failure. It's always this. It's never a righteous king ruling throughout his lifetime and passing the king to the next most qualified philosopher king, as Plato said, the philosopher king.
So if I don't want to live under that system, I mean, what do you want done with me?
Listen. Okay, well let's just summarize the other three. Okay, oligarchy, rule by the rich. Okay, you have no say in that. The way that goes, you end up having no say. You don't have money, you don't have say. Then you have tyranny, ruled by fear, terror, right? Tyr from Mars, Tyre, Tyr, Tur, the Mars, the wolf deity. This is Mars, masculine, destructive. Rule through tyranny. The ruler is terrified of his people, therefore he makes the people terrified of him to keep up the guys, right? Keep up the charade. Then you have democracy. Now you could say that we don't live under a true democracy today, but nonetheless, let's just say we do. Democratic republic, we think it's the holy grail of society. Democracy, Plato said, was rule by mental illness. Rule by mental illness. Democracy is not the holy grail of freedom. It is perhaps the most endangering of freedom. Tyranny, there's no mistakes about it. You can defend yourself or you can't. You get trampled or you're the trampler. Okay? Oligarchy, you make the money or you don't. Same thing. You either seize the money, make it. It's actually a pretty fair playing field, assuming you're not born into slavery forever. It's actually a pretty fair playing field. Democracy, however, with all the red tape, with all the the delegates and this and that, you don't have any say. Even if you amassed as much power and money as you could, you might not even penetrate into the decision-making party. Okay? So democracy is no bastion of freedom or ideas or, hang on, I gotta get my cat out.
And I think the big takeaway too from kind of what he's saying is that there are very few places in the world where you can pack up your shit in a car and drive and find a group like you're discussing here. Whatever tickles your fancy. And for the most part, I mean, just look at the Amish. There have been cultures like the Amish, and nowhere do they prosper more than in America. And although from the outside looking in, you could say they have this and that, and it's a give and take. The reality is once you get in there, the red tape kind of disappears. And that's just kind of like the illusory bars to keep you from simply going out and finding what it is you feel like you would fit into. And so, like Longo was saying, the key is just to realize you have the freedom of choice, and nowhere is that more plain, at least in my experience. And I've been lucky enough to travel a large part of the world. Is that more clear than here? Now, you can talk to somebody in a third world country, and the reason they want to come to America could be different than somebody else from another country. But for the most part, the overwhelming majority is they just feel like they have the freedom to do whatever they can to, celebrate their family, raise children the way they want to under the
Why should we tell them
religion
how to live their lives
or
to begin
belief.
with?
Right. I mean, everybody gets their cut. I mean,
I'm just saying,
cast,
like, we're about freedom of choice, but then yet we're choosing, well, this is how a specific system should work. And what I want to do is like look
but
at more of the
what
psychological
system?
aspects of this.
Right, and I agree with you there. But what
So, like
system
the
are we
Stanley
choosing?
Milgram experiment, for instance.
So here, guys, I was going through the 4 branches of government, and I don't think we can wrap that picture up unless I
They
go
all
through the
fall
4.
under statism.
Well,
And if it's
whatever.
voluntary
You know.
government, it's not government. That's according to the
Okay.
definition of anarchy, which comes
You're
from
saying
Anarchon.
you're saying things, but it doesn't change things. You have. Let's just go through the 4th state of government here, and we can decide whether statism is such a big
Sure.
boogeyman to be
It's
afraid of.
interesting. I mean,
You
I
got your
know like
4th.
Eric Dubay and stuff like
No,
they
I differ from
understand.
Eric Dubay. I
Yeah,
differ
it's
from Eric
interesting.
Dubay. He shies away. He's, I guess you could say, an anarchist, like, in the
Yeah.
good sense,
He's a
not
voluntarist.
anarchy. I am all about authority, divine right.
So would you suppress your conscience and do what you're told because an authority figure tells you to do so?
I've been on sports teams, and I know you have to suck it up to win.
But that's voluntary. You're not being complied, like having to.
That's not true. Do I want to run laps around the field? That's
So if-
compulsory.
So you're going to be violently coerced against your will to do something.
Not if I have anything to say. Who's going to violently coerce me?
Like talking
Who?
about a sports team is different from talking about like not paying your taxes, which is
Well, let's take it where you want to take it. What are we talking about?
Corey, could I ask a question?
Sure.
I understand that when there is authority, when there is absolute power, it is corrupted absolutely, and there's misuse of power. And then once there's something to wield, if the wrong person wields it, everyone can suffer. I get that,
So,
but could it not be? Could the question not be posed that if not everyone is just in their behavior, like you have to assume that everyone is just going to like be good and follow the rules and have like social moral codes about them, and no one's ever going to want to exploit or hurt or realize, hey, there's no authority, so I can do what I want now and I can get what I want because I don't share the moral code of this other person here. I'm going to take from them.
So listen, kingship, 4th branch of government, the 4th type of government. Okay.
I'll let him go. I mean, if he wants, I can explain all this, but I don't think the duty is on me. I'd rather ask him questions.
I didn't call into your show.
I'm just
You called
letting
into
Jimmy know
mine.
because he was asking me a
Okay.
question, so I wanted to answer him real quick. I'm sorry.
Well, it's my show. I'm gonna talk. I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
talk.
I just
Okay.
wanted to let him know. I'm sorry I can't answer you right now. I'm sorry.
He'll be okay.
I'm patient. I can be patient.
It's all good.
You have a kingship. This is what we've all, everyone out there, prove to me that you haven't had Disney so sunk into your subconscious that you're not triggered by the concept of a king. Rulership does not mean submitting to rule. It means ruling over bad desires, bad urges. Under a kingship, every man is king of themselves. Under a president, every man is what? A fractured, impotent nothing. Under democracy, oligarchy, tyranny, nothing. Under a kingship, each citizen, no matter how lowly, is king of themselves. Under a kingship, every man is king of their domain, king of their house. Okay, it's not just about one guy getting lucky. It's about dignifying man on the national level. Man is running the show. Man has all the say, all the power. We trust one man in our nation with that because we trust every man in our nation with that. That's the pursuit. It's a standard. It's not, oh no, that one guy can tell me what to do. That's not what a king is all about. We have been so far removed. We have not been allowed to understand what a king truly is. Nations used to pick the best person they had, the best philosopher kings like Plato dreamt of. Okay? This might have been 10,000 years ago. This might have been 100 years ago. Tartaria, Atlantis, I don't care. It happened. It can happen. We need to stop thinking that men are so feeble that they can't handle responsibility and riches and power. The king is not rich. The king has access to all the riches. The king can tell anybody what to do. Yes. Does that terrify you? Why? If that idea terrifies you, you are terrified by what you would do if you had that much power. That is the fear. Being afraid of authority is a fool's game. There is authority. The father tells the child what to do. And I'm sorry to tell you, but when you're 25, you are still a child to your nation, to whatever community you're benefiting from. You do need authority. I don't know. I'm sorry for whatever your dad did to you or whatever your uncle did to you, this or that. Not you, just anyone out there, Authority is not something to be afraid of. There is a father, there is a masculine deity writing the script to everything, whether we like it or not. Is that a man with a beard? No, but it's an essence, it's a divine force, it's masculine. Okay? That is the king. We need to structure ourselves that way too. The only freedoms we have in America are the fruits of the fact that our president is endowed as though he were a king. In many ways, he can get things done with the snap of fingers. The worst part of our country is how slow the work gets done because democracy, ruled by the crazy. Democracy, well, that's just some wordplay, but what is it? It's mental illness. Two hemispheres of the brain arguing over and over and over. And, going back to your authority, Eric Dubay thing, I love Eric, but I disagree. I'm a political entity. I'm sorry to break it to everyone out there. The holy grail of being like an individual is not making enough money, getting married, getting kids, and running off into the woods and saying, "Oh, I'm going to get my little piece of land, going off grid, and no one's ever going to bother me." Fool's game. You're just waiting for the FEMA camps to come knocking at your door, and you're not going to have anyone to help you. Be in the city centers. Make the city centers as good as you'd want your commune out in the farm. Okay? Now, I know this is idealism, and I can say these things without ever having them tested, but I'm just saying what I've gleaned from Plato is that you have a duty to represent yourself in every sphere, as a man especially, or as a woman, whatever. As a man, you especially have a duty to represent yourself, your family, in every sphere there is. What does that mean? Oh, I don't like science, but I need to know enough about science to not be duped by the scientists, right? I need to know enough about politics not to get duped by the politicians. Plato said we have a duty to represent ourselves in every sphere, even the political, no matter how above it you think yourself to be. You are not so good to where you don't have to turn on and figure out who's going to be president. You can't hide out in the woods and ignore the nation.
We absolutely are. We're
Okay,
building it in Florida, and we're showing you. I will show you. I can get back on this live stream 1 year from now, and I'll be in the food forest, by the way, that we're building in around Tampa area.
Okay, so what are you saying that's disagreeing with what I'm saying? Food forests are great.
I agree about people should not necessarily go off grid, okay? But I do agree people should probably get out of the cities if they care about what's going on a little bit. But that's just my personal opinion. But that's my personal opinion. No.
Do you know how many cities? Do you know how many cities have been founded?
I'm a very nature-seeking person, so that's just my opinion. If it's just my opinion, I'm not saying everybody has to do it. I'm just saying that's what I think, okay? But my whole idea of what I'm trying to talk about is the idea that think whatever you want, just don't impose on others using violence. It's really that simple. It's the golden rule. It's been taught for thousands of years, except we just have a...
I think you're just talking. That's not really countering what I was saying.
I mean, Carl Jung even said in his book that every government turns into oligarchy and technocracy.
Sure, which is why you get enough guns to overthrow the outdated one, which is written explicitly into our...
Now, let me ask you, the abolitionists, when they wanted to end slavery in the 1800s, I mean, they had to convince the populace after thousands of years of a slave master being their legitimate slave master over the slaves. They had to convince the slaves, like, hey, you are not supposed to be a slave. The slave didn't know how to read or write. They thought that it was their natural condition. Everybody accepted it because they've had it for thousands of years. How do you break such a superstition that has been held for so long?
Move them to America. Best thing that ever happened to them. They would have been. You think they weren't enslaving people in Africa? They come from a culture of enslaving each other in Africa for thousands of years. The best thing that ever happened to them was getting dropped off in America, where they could taste freedom. They could taste, oh wow, if we could only raise that high, if we could only rise that high. I don't see that as an issue. You know, Native Americans were enslaving each other, right? Africans were enslaving each other.
Yes.
It was only the nations. It was only the nations that had heeded Plato's callings that had rid themselves of slavery the soonest. Some of which happened to have kings, I mind you. Okay. Some of the first countries to outlaw slavery had kings.
Yeah.
Well, oh, what was that? The rights of the individual being exalted under, a kingship.
But does
that
writing it
can't
down
occur.
make it wrong? Like, I
I
mean,
don't
if you
listen. I don't know. Are you and I differing on any positions? Just state it clearly.
I'm saying, like, yeah, like the abolitionists were saying that you had to change the conscience of human beings to help them understand that slavery is wrong. You can't just write it down on a piece of paper and say it's illegal and therefore it's wrong. People like William Lloyd Garrison, who basically championed like the abolitionist cause through his newspaper, were strictly saying people should not engage with politics and the political system to change things, and that there
Why
needed to
not?
be education. And that's because he saw slavery not only being supported by the government and through the Fugitive Slave Law Act, but also because, well, the very foundations of government, like the Sumerian Empire, were founded on slavery. And you can go back to the
Okay.
abolitionist literature, and they talk a lot about this. I mean, I'm just curious how much you know about. I'm just sharing it, and I like hearing your ideas. I'm new to the Plato thing, and I'm willing to admit.
Abolitionist literature is not a brand of toilet paper that I've been buying recently. But
I like hearing your views. I mean, I also disagree on the veganism thing, but that's okay. It is what it is, right?
Do you think
Like I said,
do you think everyone can live as you guys are living in the food forest? Like, do you think just say America, for example,
listen.
can everyone
Sorry.
be that way, or does everyone want to?
No, yeah, they can do whatever they want. I'm saying we can replace some of the lawns that we have that we spray poisons on and the ornamentals with edible plants that are native perennials that grow with ease, like longevity spinach, known as the plant that cures over 100 diseases. That's what it translates to in Asia. It's native here in Florida. Anybody can grow it.
Right.
I
So
literally, it grows like a weed.
What if a president came in power and did that?
It's not the president, it's the person. I don't say it's the authority that made it happen. It's the person with their leadership that people look up to, and they think it's the authority that does it. It's because of the person that is influencing others. People can be an influencer, and they don't need authority. They don't need violence to do it. People can share good ideas.
What is violence? See, you keep inserting violence. Who's violent? Who's violent?
Think of violence as in violation of rights. If you
I'm also losing grasp on what we're arguing about. I would love to argue.
I'm saying slavery
are there
exists.
firm? What
And
does that have to do with anything?
Well, I'm saying we can end it, just as the abolitionists told us.
I
know this sounds wild.
You can end it. You can end it all you want to, but people are still going to sign up to be Uber drivers. Some people are as good as slaves, whether you like it or not. That's always the way it always will be.
Yeah, if people want to be under an authority, be my guest, but don't drag me under that net, right? If you want to live under your own commune,
if you're afraid of this, I'm not
afraid.
Time.
Yes, we're creating these communities right now, and it's inspiring people to show them in person what it looks like, and having these freedom gatherings where we're coming together and showing people gold and silver and all the stuff.
Seems like you're pitching your stuff against me as if I'm not down with food forests.
I don't know if you are. I'm just. But
how do you not know if I am? Why'd you call into my show? You just want to hear
because I was
talk?
Curious if you knew who Mark and them were, or stated some revolt. I'm glad that I share something new, and you share something new with me.
I like Eric. Awesome. I love Eric Dubé. I think you shouldn't get so triggered. Just since here, I'll just cut through the mix here. I think you get triggered by authority. It seems like, and it seemed like this was just like a get me to talk about authority in a way that
more like I believe in self-ownership.
Self-ownership, great. If What's the point? What's
That no one owns you. No one has a claim over your own life and property other than you.
great? That's
Can that
awesome.
be decided within you? Can that be decided in each individual mind? And then can that decision impact and inform their actions and the way they live their life? Can you decide to be a slave, or can you decide to also be free?
I mean, yeah, your mind is your predicament. You said the principle of mentalism. If you believe that you're supposed to be under the control of somebody else, then you will believe it. And many people do. And they don't know what happened to their mindset at a very young age through the Prussian schooling system that trains them into obedience, not virtue, but obedience as virtue. They equate the two.
Okay, so you wanted to call in and ask what? Remind me. Just hear
If you knew who Mark
what?
Pasio was, Eric DeBay, and if you knew about voluntarism or statism, and I'm glad to bring it up. I mean, if you were to look into it, and I'm just being honest, coming from like, I was in your shoes, and I absolutely agreed with you. Like, if you got talked to me like 5 years ago, I'd be 100% down with everything you said. But because I came across new information, I must be clear on my conscience, and I know this is not necessarily like the easiest thing
It
to
doesn't
grasp because
sound
it
like we
wasn't for
differ. It
me.
doesn't sound like we differ on much of anything. It just
Yeah,
sounds like
I don't
every
think
time
so.
I brought up authority, you got fearful. That's the only
Maybe because it's just wordplay,
difference.
perhaps. But if you were to say study some of these people's works and they're like on that subject, you might see okay, there's a different worldview out there, and
No,
that's all I can
I've been
offer.
in your shoes, Carl. I almost Corey. I've been in your shoes. I grew out of that. See how patronizing that is? I used to be the little leftist. Oh, I'll go build
Well,
enough pineapple
I did used to
papayas out
believe
in
in
the woods,
authority.
and all my problems will be solved. Yeah. You ever been on a winning sports team? Have you?
I actually I played baseball like 7 8 years. My dad was
That
a
does
coach.
not count at all.
My dad was
Baseball
a
is
coach.
the
My
gayest
family's very
sport
close. A lot of people don't have traditional
by
families. Do you
far.
say people are
Okay.
lacking masculine and feminine? I mean, come on.
I
I'm a
don't
good
know.
example.
Baseball is about as girly as it gets, but that's okay. Let's say you've been on a winning sports team. You had to sacrifice. You ever go to like a boot camp? You ever like get hazed into a group and have your individuality pounded out of you? It's not as bad of a thing
No,
as you
people
might
get
think.
together. They voluntarily organize all the time.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not saying people should not have hierarchy. It's like that's
I
insane.
don't think we're disagreeing on anything really. I think
Yeah,
you're just being a little catty in my
we're
in
probably
my
not disagreeing, but I would encourage you to look into some of those ideas and
I'm not
see
gonna
what you can
encourage you
learn.
to look in anything. I'm a busy guy. I don't care.
Okay, that is
It
the
sounds like you have it figured out, and you should make your own YouTube channel and see how many people really care about what you have to say, not try and dish it off into my neck of the woods. You got your food forest figured out. You know you're
all
good to
right.
go.
So be it.
Okay,
Thank you.
and
I appreciate your work, though. I appreciate your work.
you even tried to make it seem like I was almost anti food forest, or put me in a position where I have to like assure you that I'm okay
I
with
don't
food
know if I
forests.
ever said
No,
anything,
just
but
watch my YouTube channel. Just watch my YouTube channel.
yeah, I
You
love
know,
your stuff. That's why I came in
read
here.
good.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Well,
and I hope
I
that
don't do the passive aggressive. If you're coming to step on my toes, let's go. We can ask the other two guys to step out. We can argue. We can debate. Whatever. But I don't do that. Okay,
all
bro.
right. I
Yeah,
if you
dude.
want, I have a medical project. I know you're a doctor. If you want, you can learn about it. Some people, where we go over this mindset and we address it from a scientific point of view.
Okay.
But although it's not, necessary per se.
Okay.
Um,
Authority is good. Winners like authority. Losers are offended by authority. That's my life experience. Losers think they can just run off into the woods and eat papayas and the world will fix itself. Okay, no, we need to band together. We need to mount the city centers, bring them under our wing. You know how many great, disgusting leftist cities have been created out of people leaving a different city? Oh yeah, let's take your little food forest. What happens when 100 people move there? What happens when 1,000 people
I'm not
live
asking for
nearby?
people to move
Okay,
anywhere.
are you going to have the authority to keep people away when they start encroaching on
I
your
don't
territory?
claim to have authority.
Okay, well,
What if someone
you
kills
didn't.
someone, does something horrible to someone else in the community? How, like, what?
You defend them, or you
That's
try
okay.
to resolve the
With
conflict. I
authority,
mean,
like, so
Corey,
there's, you know,
Is there anything you want to say? I got
no,
riled
man.
up, but
I think you.
every time I harden on a position, it seems like you just soften and like deflate. I'm
Okay,
trying to argue here, but it seems like you just jellyfish away.
I
every
mean,
time.
if that's how it goes, it is what it is. I don't listen, I know what I'm sharing is difficult to share, so
No,
if
that's
I'm
not
saying it
true.
wrong,
It's not
then
true. Very
I
simple.
know that
It's very
I don't
simple,
feel
and it's
guilty,
very
my conscience.
repetitive. It's very long-winded,
It
and it
probably
sounds
is.
very
I'm sorry
vague,
if I
like
can't portray it as good as I would
fruit
like.
and good.
I'm sorry.
Fruit forests, you got it good.
Thank you, man. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you for answering the questions.
Sweet. Yeah. Feel free to call in again. I
Sure.
actually like arguing. I wish we could have hashed it out a little bit better, like tit for tat,
I don't
maybe.
like doing debates. I don't do that type of thing on my channel. I like you said, I like to show by example, and it's not why I'm like a very competitive person, but I do say that there is optimism though for the future. Absolutely, people should not be in the fear mindset because what's being created right now in Florida, all over, is amazing. And if I don't want to plug anything, but I'm just saying there's communities across the whole state and they're building like acres and acres of food forests and they're showing like this is what freedom looks
Yeah,
like.
they're all my friends. All
Yeah.
my friends. How long have you been in Florida?
I've been only about a year. I didn't expect to get
Okay,
in
so I've
so
been doing this for like 3 years. Every food forest in town watches my videos, if I may be so brash.
yeah.
And
It's another
okay,
reason why I
so
reached out. A lot of
thanks for checking in. Thanks
my
for
colleagues are
checking
like
in.
they
Okay.
love your work too.
Okay. Thanks for checking in. Wish
Yeah,
you all the best.
no
Go
problem.
read some Plato. Go read
All
some
right.
Plato.
Go read some Lark and Rose.
I think there's some guys that if you'd really
We'll do
check
a
out,
trade.
you'd change your position,
You
and in
want to do a
10
trade?
years from now, you won't be. No, you just go make your own YouTube channel. See how many people care about
All
what you have
right.
to say.
Everybody drink
See
raw
about
milk.
how
I'm sure you're gonna
convincing.
hate that one.
See
Just
how
kidding. Oh,
convincing
you
you are
you
in your
want to be
words.
combative. I'll be
You're
like, drink raw
welcome.
milk, raw organs. No, I'm
You're,
just kidding. I won't do that.
you're
That's too
welcome
far.
for me letting you on here. You're welcome.
All right. Peace out, man. Thank you.